Welcome to the Ronnie Brunswijk Memorial World of Concacaf podcast. I am Eric Schmitz.
And I'm Jonathan Slape.
And I'm Donald Wine. Is it a memorial? Did he die?
No, but I think just in advance we could just dedicate this to him, like in perpetuity, because I don't know if you guys saw this, but like we got the most CONCACAF shit possible last week.
It's layers. There's lots of layers. Like, it's not just him playing, right? It's then afterwards him giving out money in the locker room to the other team, and then both teams getting thrown out of the tournament.
He's the vice president of the country, not just like an executive. He's not just like the owner of the team. Like you see owners want to suit up once in a while for their squads. Like they got the money, they can do that. He is the vice president of the entire nation.
This is literally like if Dick Cheney or Joe Biden or Kamala, like if they just decided.
This is Kamala, right?
Yeah, this is Kamala who's decided to suit up and play. Like it is just like or Al Gore. I think he could have gotten around the pitch a little bit, but I mean it's probably Gore or Kamala are the two that are.
But say Kamala could probably ball. Like
Yeah,
don't put it past
ball.
VP Kamala to ball.
We can have this discussion later on, but it's not like it was a Sunday league game. This is the CONCACAF league. This is the second biggest club competition in the region. It's not fourth division local kick around. They ran out of bodies. The dude wanted glory.
Yeah,
and he got it.
He did.
Oh, he got it, all of it.
And then I guess the
everything.
owner, continuing the CONCACAF of high-ranking people that want to play, but the guy in New Amsterdam who basically Jermaine Jones got fired because he wouldn't start the owner and goal.
Yeah,
but
it wasn't even.
Go
He
ahead.
wasn't even started. Like it wasn't even that, right? Like Jermaine Jones wasn't even the head coach. He was the assistant. And he disagreed with the owner and saying that he should even play at all, but he didn't have final say. And he still got fired or let go or quit because the owner was insistent on playing. And he played last night as we record on Thursday, September 30th, and my Detroit City beat the brakes off of him. Absolutely demolished them.
The highlights were good, but I don't want to get too caught up in fourth division American soccer.
Don't be an owner.
Shenanigans
In play.
Well,
You'll get rocked.
Don't be an
Listen.
owner. Don't be a state official.
Guys, we got to focus. We have CONCACAF World Cup qualifying to talk about.
You're right. Let's do it.
Yeah, and if you guys would have noticed by looking at this podcast when you clicked on it, this isn't a typical podcast. We're not going to do our CONCACAF laser focus. We're not going to bring you to one of our CONCACAF member nations and take you in a deep dive. We're not doing any of that. We're just going to talk purely about the October World Cup qualifying window. So first off, let's get back to where we were. Donald, can you remind us how everything's looking right now in the standings?
Yeah, so if everyone remembers, in September, we had 3 matches, and we will have 3 more coming up in October. But before we get into that, let's take a look at how the standings look right now. First place right now is Mexico with 7 points. They have a +2 goal differential. They won 2 matches and drew 1 in September. Canada and the United States both have 5 points. Both have won a game. Both have 2 draws. Both have scored 5 goals. And both have only allowed 2 goals for a +3 goal differential. The only reason Canada is listed in second place is alphabetical order. That's the only reason that they are in second place in the standings. U.S. is in third, but for all intents and purposes, these two are literally tied in every statistical category other than the alphabet.
Personally, I think we got hosed on that one.
The other
I know,
head-to-head was, the other tiebreakers head-to-head, and they literally drew each other.
Scoring the same amount of goals. Everything is a wash for those, but they're the 2 and 3 teams in CONCACAF right now. Panama is 4th. They also have 5 points, but they have a +3 goal differential. They are 4th by goals scored. They have only scored 4 goals to the United States and Canada's 5, which is why they are in 4th place. Still right now in the position of the interconfederational playoff. 5th place, Costa Rica with 2 points. They only had 2 draws and a loss. They have a -1 goal differential. Honduras and El Salvador also have 2 points, 2 draws, and a loss. Both of them have -3 goal differentials. El Salvador is below Honduras in 7th place by goals scored. They have not scored a goal yet in World Cup qualifying. They had 2 scoreless draws, and then they lost to Canada 3-0 in the final match day of the September window. And then finally, a team that we were very excited to see play, but obviously had some issues with COVID getting their players in, is Jamaica. They only have 1 point. They had the 1 draw in September. They have a -4 goal differential. And really, this is going to be a very important window for Jamaica to get back into the swing of things.
Okay. Thank you for the update, Donald. Still early on in the process. We're only through 3 matches of the final round of qualifying. Before we get to what lies ahead here in October, let's talk about the squads. As we record on Thursday the 30th, we have 6 of the 8 teams who have announced squads. Honduras and Canada have already announced they're going to be dropping their rosters on Friday, October 1st. So we don't have those quite yet, but we'll go through the rest of these in order of FIFA rankings. So we'll give you an update of where everyone's sitting in the FIFA rankings. So first, with 9th ranked Mexico, who was retained their 9th spot in the latest FIFA rankings. Looks like they called in 4 goalkeepers. I think the big headline is Raul Jimenez has been added to the roster. Obviously, he's been out he was out for a significant period of time with that intensive head injury. Herving Lozano in the squad. Expecting Rogelio Funes Mori to be the number 9. Guys, do you have any thoughts on this Mexico roster?
No, I mean, it's about what I thought it would be. I mean, I think we saw that Raul Jimenez missed out last time, I think, in large part to the red list issue with Mexico being a red list country. However, as of this evening at 4 p.m. today, there's actually been a relaxation of the UK red list restrictions for players that are double vaccinated. So they're only going to they'll have a shorter quarantine but they will be able to train. It says it'll be similar to that experience by Olympic athletes in Tokyo this summer. So they'll be allowed to train playing matches the day they return.
Yeah, that was what I saw from that in Raul Jimenez, in that Mexico once again has 2 home matches this window, and Mexico, at least at one point, or still maybe on the red list for the UK. But the relaxation of that means if he's double vaccinated, then he would be able to still possibly play and then come back and be able to train with his club team until he gets out of that quarantine. But it's not the full 10 days, which is what has really prompted a lot of uncertainty with some of these rosters and how big they are.
Yeah. The other thing to note is, I know there's been a lot of dual national talk for months and years about guys choosing between the United States and Mexico. I don't see any names of any of those guys that chose Mexico. Sucks. Guess that's a decision you guys made. The other thing I do want to note, speaking of matches, I don't know if you guys saw it. Apparently Mexico is playing Ecuador in Charlotte on October 27th. Just some random Wednesday friendly. I don't know why U.S. Soccer continues to let them play games here, but
I don't know why they want to play that game literally between the 2 windows, like in the middle of 2 windows.
Well, I get Tata Martino had like a press conference talking about it, like get hype up for the game, and it sounds like they're going to bring mostly Liga MX guys. We'll see I don't know what that's going to do for them, but
they must be hurting for cash.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it could be their
that's why they play their games here.
It could be their version of a January camp type of deal. And that's fine. It just seems like in between the windows that they're going to have, especially these 2 important windows, it seems kind of interesting that they would do it then, as opposed to waiting until, December, when they have a couple of months between windows where they can kind of, tinker with lineups and bring in guys for evaluation.
I mean, also could be trying to game the FIFA rankings, trying to pick up a few extra points. I mean, they're sitting
Absolutely.
in ninth right now. You're not far away from getting seeded. But speaking of another team that's fighting to get seeded and is not doing a very good job of late, the 13th ranked United States of America. They actually dropped 3 points in the FIFA rankings after their disappointing September.
Solid, but fine.
It was
room
fine.
for improvement.
I think fine is probably the best way to put it.
Yeah, I think fine is
B minus.
Yeah. I'd go C plus.
See, I wouldn't, because they're in second place, and that's where you want to be in first or second after the window.
I mean, they're in a spot right now, which I guess is all that matters. Doesn't matter if you win, you finish first or third. You got to finish first, second, or third. That's all that really matters.
Right.
But anyways, Greg Berhalter announced the roster on Wednesday the 29th. So we have our U.S. squad for these October matches. Notable omissions, Christian Pulisic, who has been still struggling with injuries. Giovanni Reyna, also hurt. Any other surprises for you in this roster? It looks like Ricardo Pepi has really solidified his spot as the number 9 after his performance in Honduras.
All right. I was just going to say, I think that, we still, there's been some reports that we may still see Pulisic come in for that third game. I think it was, I want to say it was, I don't know if it was Paul Tenorio, someone else, but that there's been that discussion. But I mean, probably the surprises for me, Donald and I were talking before we started recording. Jordan Pefok, just because, I mean, you have a guy that's scored 9 goals in all competitions since August, the start of the season. But other than that, like, I mean, there's not really, with the injuries that are out there, I don't have a lot of complaints. I know that everyone has a few guys that they would have liked to seen. But I think probably the other big thing that Berhalter did call out in his press conference was that there's no Julian Araujo, and he said that like any communication around why or why not, that is going to have to come from Araujo.
He gone.
Yeah, basically. But I mean, honestly, the one catch for me here is Weston McKennie's back in the lineup. There's some people who, for inexplicable reasons, said that were saying in September that he should not be called into this window. That's absolutely stupid. But he's back in this lineup. Obviously, everything that happened in September with the violation of team protocols is water under the bridge, lesson learned, all the, cliches you want to say. And he's back in the fold, which is going to be very important, because also joining him is Yunus Musa, who's back from injury. Tyler Adams, who had a couple of knocks between the windows. He's in there. So we still could have a very solid midfield.
Yeah, no, I mean, getting Musa back in the fold is huge. I think his presence was kind of missed in the last window. At good news for Gianluca Busio and Luca De La Torre, who are finally going to get their chance to get into World Cup qualifying. I do think that they're going to make an impact. For me, I think the thing that I don't think enough people are talking about is he only called in, was it 26 guys? Or is it 27? 27 guys.
27.
There's 4 or 5 guys sitting on yellow cards. And with the current rules of World Cup qualifying, 2 yellows is a suspension. So if you have a couple guys pick up yellows in this first match, like all of a sudden you're shorthanded. And with the uncertainty as to who might be able to travel to Panama for that second game, I mean, you could be going down there with less than 23.
So I think the issue with that I don't think it's as big an issue as we make it out to be, only because he still has the opportunity to call in guys throughout the camp. And like you said, Christian Pulisic could be called in if they think he's fit enough to come for that match. Honestly, there could be some shuffling around this lineup if we perform well in the first 2 matches. If we get 2 wins on the road, maybe he sends some of these people with yellow cards back to say, hey, look, we'll take care of this. We'll take care of this third game without you, and call in some other guys. So I feel like when people are upset that their guy or their guys didn't make the roster, it's just this initial roster. We could see them at some point in the window if things go one way or the other.
Yeah. For me, if you know that you might use them, like, clubs are supposed to release guys. Like, you can have them integrated with the group. having a guy fly in after the first game to play in the second game probably isn't the most ideal. You'd want him practicing with the team for a couple days, especially since, you haven't played with these guys in at least a month. Some of these guys haven't been in since the Gold Cup. It's just easier. I feel like it might be easier to integrate, but I mean, Greg Berhalter is paid to be a coach who makes these decisions, and I'm just some asshole with a podcast. So, it's your mileage may vary.
You are not an asshole.
That's a new
podcast.
tagline. Eric Schmidt's some asshole with a podcast.
Honestly, I think it's
the
also
headline of my obituary.
Yeah, and also just to put a bow on this, I also think Greg probably is looking at saying 27 guys is enough for him to manage. And I know some people, we were talking about this the other day when the roster dropped, but if everyone had their people and we'd have 70 people in a camp, and that's unmanageable. And even if we had some of these people who were on the fringe that could have made it, or some people say should have made it, we still would have been at 35, 36 guys. And maybe Greg says, 35 is not a way to integrate anybody because there's just too many guys to be able to evaluate and figure out and take a look at. Maybe 27 is what he thinks is the biggest group that he can bring, that he can manage.
Yeah. I mean, after that September window, when you had all those injuries, I mean, you weren't expecting to lose a guy to COVID. You weren't expecting to have to kick a guy out of camp. You had a couple guys go down. Now you've got the yellow card thing hanging over your head as well. It just seems odd to me that they wouldn't go up to 29 or 30. Like, you can fight over who you think deserve to get called in or what positions you might want some more backup, but just, I don't know.
We're Americans. We're really good at debating that. We're really good at that.
Yeah. I don't know. All right. Moving on. That's the United States. Next is Costa Rica, who in the FIFA rankings sitting 44th for the second month in a row. Before Jonathan gets his chance to talk about Randall Leal, do want to point out Keylor Navas, PSG keeper, in the lineup.
Again.
Expecting Joel Campbell to be the guy up front for him. Jonathan, you want to get your Nashville love out of the way?
No, I just every time I look at this Costa Rica roster, I'm just reminded like how old some of these guys are. Like Venegas, Ruiz, Vargas, Kendall Watson. Like I feel like this is a team that Joel Campbell. I still feel this is a team that needs some refreshing. I don't know what the youth system's like coming at for the Ticos, but every time I look at this roster, I keep thinking, man, I've been watching these players for what feels like well over a decade.
It's funny to me because I'm looking at Jose Guillermo Ortiz, and I remember when he was with DC United, and that was 4 years ago. So he was not a spring chicken then, and he's still, flirting with the fringe of this roster. He makes it this time, but he's been on and off the roster the last couple of years. I think it really is just coming down to Costa Rica realizes that their best chance of making the World Cup is with the guys that are the veterans, because the youth is not ready to perform at the level required. So it's a real big challenge for them because I don't think their player pool is very deep. And, everything that Eric just talked about with the yellow cards and injuries, stuff like that, that's going to really bite them in the butt if this happens to them this window, because unlike previous cycles, they don't have as big a player pool to kind of rely on.
Yeah. So last swing at it for an older aging group for Costa Rica. We'll talk more about them in a bit. Next up, Canada actually moved up to 51st in the FIFA rankings, moving up 8 spots from 59. As we mentioned earlier, their roster is getting announced Friday the 1st, so no feedback there. We're expecting their full cast to be there. I don't believe they have any major injury concerns. I mean, as long as Alphonso Davies is on the field for them, I think they're in good shape.
Jonathan David's been playing for Lille. I don't think they have any big injury concerns coming into to this game.
Yeah, so probably looking at another good window for Canada, sitting in second in the standings. Next up, Jamaica, ranked 59th in the world. Again, they had a really rough September. They're sitting last in the Ocho right now. 59th in the world, down 9 spots from 50. It looks like they got their full complement of UK guys that they missed for the last window. Mikel Antonio, Andre Gray, up front. I mean, they're deep. They got Andre Blake in goal, who's arguably one of the top keepers in CONCACAF. I don't think I'm talking out of school for saying that. Your thoughts on Jamaica, Donald?
I think this makes the game against the United States on October 7th very intriguing because, like you said, they got their big guys in from England, including Mikel Antonio, who has been lighting it up as of late. Even today in Europa League was just destroying everybody. So I think that's the important question now is how do they integrate as a team? Do they have the time to mesh well as a team and really get the points that they need to climb back into this thing?
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing for me with Jamaica's roster is just like the diverse nature of like the levels that these guys are playing at. Like there's a handful of guys who are playing Premier League and Championship, a lot of MLS guys. There's also guys who are playing second division in the US. Third string keeper Dennis Taylor is at something called Humble Lion FC.
As is his boy Jovan Watson.
Yeah, I mean, it must be the powerhouse. We haven't gotten to that episode yet for real team, fake team. But Jonathan, you got something?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big omission here is Leon Bailey, who's missing through injury. I know he came off the bench in Villa's big win the other day, and then was subsequently injured. Yeah, I think it's just being held out from a concern of re-aggravating that. So, I mean, I think that he's the big missing piece for this team. But, I mean, you can't go into another window and pull off just a single win, or, I mean, a single point. I mean, this is a team that we've talked about and, has a lot of promise. And there's a lot of guys here that have a lot, like, there's just a lot of talent here. And they have to find a way to get this team working together. I think, the relaxation of any of the red list stuff will definitely help them, but there's too many good individuals on this team to be sitting bottom of the pile.
Yeah. And I think the red list, I don't think there's any debate that it hurt them the most in that September window. So they're really playing from behind here. So, I mean, there's 9 points on the table for everybody. So we'll see what they can do. Next up, we've got Honduras. Honduras sticking at number 63 in the world in the latest FIFA rankings. Their roster is getting announced Friday the 1st. We do not have that yet. I don't believe we have any thoughts on Honduras. We will see if they can make it through a home match without having fans throw shit at their own players.
I will note that they also got charged by FIFA for use of a homophobic chant. I think it's not the one that you were used to. It's another one that is also quite familiar in Central American circles. I don't think I really heard it in large scale when we were down there, but they have been charged with that inappropriate conduct for that match, and CONCACAF is investigating.
Yeah. I did see that they're planning 50% capacity for their home matches because I believe they have 2 of them this window. So, big window for Honduras. Next up, El Salvador. Hugo Perez's squad dropping 1 spot to 65th in the FIFA rankings. They arguably had a decent first window. Looks like the same cast of characters. Eric Zavaleta is going to be the one anchoring the defense. Alex Roldan, who's having a really good season with Seattle Sounders. He is back in the squad. Do we have any thoughts on La Selecta?
I mean, I don't have any additional thoughts from this roster going into the last one. I think that's a team that works really well as a unit, and Hugo Perez has done a great job of putting the squad together and getting them playing together. So I mean, I think they definitely have a good opportunity to pick up some more points, and I think they're going to be one of those teams that is going to be enjoyable to watch because I like the style that they play.
One of the things for me is they haven't scored a goal yet in qualifying, but it's not for lack of effort. We see these guys are putting the work in, and I think the momentum that they need is just to put one in the net. And once that happens, maybe that's the thing that turns them around.
Yeah, for sure. Finally, we've got Panama. Panama sitting at 68th in the FIFA rankings, moving up 6 spots from 74. I mean, they're a squad that's not very deep. They've got their MLS guys. I'm sure Jonathan's going to shout out Anibal Godoy. Donald, you got any other thoughts on Panama?
Not really. It'll be interesting to see how they play because, as we know, they played Mexico very well at home last window. The United States goes down there on October 10th. I know we'll talk about some of these matchups in a second, but it'll be interesting to see how they kind of do that in the middle of the window because, like you said, I don't think they're very deep, and that may be troublesome for them as they try to find a way to keep guys fresh during these 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, they had that big win against Jamaica in the last round of qualifiers. So, I mean, I think they're sitting in a good spot, and they went up early against Mexico before conceding a later goal. So, I think that it's definitely something to keep an eye on for just the age of this team and how they're able to rotate through. Because this is definitely like Donald said, one of the smaller squads that's been called up. So, I mean, there's a lot of people to minutes to manage with this team.
Yeah, and it's a very tough window for them. We talked about how El Salvador is well organized. Then they got the U.S., who is deep and can rotate, and then they go face Canada. Tough sledding for them. But speaking of the window, let's kind of go over the schedule here. Just a quick refresher. So with the 14 matches in the Ocho, this final round of CONCACAF qualifying, there was 3 matches in September. There will be 3 match days here in October, followed by 2 in November, and then January and March of 2022 will be 3 each to wrap up this final round. Jonathan, why don't you walk us through the match days here in October of 2021?
All right, so the first match day is Thursday, October 7th. And so those games, we have United States versus Jamaica at Q2 Stadium in Austin, Honduras v Costa Rica at the Estadio Olímpico Metropolitano in San Pedro Sula, Mexico versus Canada at the Azteca, and then El Salvador versus Panama at the Estadio Cascutalán in San Salvador. Thoughts on this first window or this first match day?
I mean, I feel like the game to watch is Mexico-Canada. Like that, this is like the real first true test for Canada. Say what you want about the matchup back in September here in Nashville against the U.S. That environment was good. I mean, the U.S. is a good team, but to survive in CONCACAF, Mexico is really the bar. Way to at the Azteca. I mean, you're really going to find out what Canada's got with this game.
Yeah, I agree. And also when it comes to that, if you recall, Mexico initially in their match ban that they were handed down by FIFA, this would have been the second of the 2 games that would have been played behind closed doors. They get it rescinded, and it's only down to 1 game. They did that against Jamaica. So now this will have fans, and that obviously is a big, big boost to Mexico's chances. But like you said, Eric, like if Canada wins that'll be the win of the round. If they can get past Mexico at Azteca, it's a really tall task.
Yeah, I know. For me, I think had Jamaica performed better in the last window, I'd be looking at that U.S. versus Jamaica game as being, my match of the match day. But I think the Mexico versus Canada, seeing Canada really have to go into a hostile environment, like you guys have said, is going to be really interesting.
I do want to touch on one more thing, though. That United States-Jamaica game. Jamaica, we all talked about, they've got that top-end talent to really threaten the top teams in CONCACAF. Man, if they can go get a result against the U.S. and the U.S. is through 2 home games, doesn't have a win, like it's kind of panic mode. Like all of us, vibes are okay after that September window because they were able to steal that win in Honduras. But the U.S., you got to win your home games, and if you don't win your first 2 against 2 of the teams you assumed you were going to be able to beat, yikes.
Yeah, I will say too, I'm excited. I will not be able to make the match, but I do get to watch. The kickoff is late enough with the Mexico game that I'm going to be able to catch both the U.S. game and the Mexico game, so Mexico-Canada game. So an opportunity to catch both of those. But moving on to match day 5. So we have Jamaica versus Canada at the Office in Kingston, Costa Rica versus El Salvador in Estadio Nacional in San Jose, Mexico versus Honduras at the Azteca, and then Panama versus the United States at Estadio Romanel Fernandez in Panama City.
So for me, the game to watch, and I know we can't watch it in Panama, is Jamaica versus Canada. Why? Because to this point, Jamaica has not had fans at their games. They applied for an exemption from the government restrictions to have 5,000, I want to say, fans at this match. It has still not been approved. They still have 9 days to get it done. If they do, for those of us traveling to Jamaica in November, the United States, the American fans, it serves as a beacon of hope. But if not, that also can be a big blow to Jamaica because their fans can obviously affect the game. And the Office is one of the, more not necessarily intimidating place to play, but definitely one of the more difficult places to play with fans. So I'm looking to see if Jamaica does allow fans into that match, because if they do, Jamaica has a nice boost. If they don't, Canada can use that to their advantage.
Yeah. I mean, for me, the game I'm kind of interested, I think it has the most impact, is going to be that Costa Rica El Salvador game. Because if one of those teams gets 3 points, they're kind of in the mix. They're hanging around. You're going to start seeing, especially with so many matches and only 3 of the 8 teams getting in, by the end of the October window, you're probably going to have 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 teams who are like pretty much out of it because they're so far behind. So that's huge for Costa Rica and El Salvador to be able to steal points there.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be like you said, there's going to be probably after the end of this window, because that's going to be 6 matches. So we're going to be almost through the halfway point. There'll be 1 or 2 teams that are completely out of it. And it'll be from there. It'll be interesting to see how they manage. If it's a situation, if it's a team like, say, a Costa Rica or a Panama, do they then take that time? If they're so far behind, do they start giving time to some of their younger players to give them that experience looking forward to the next round of World Cup qualifying, which will be here much quicker than we think it is?
Yeah, I do also want to point out Panama hosting the United States. Donald and I will be on site for POSTCARDS away. So we'll hopefully have some content for you there. Really excited to get back to Panama City. One of my favorite trips I've ever taken was going down there in 2017. Looking forward to crushing some delicious Domino's pizza and getting back to Rommel Fernandez. It's a great place to see a game.
Moving on to match day 6 to wrap up the match day. So we have United States versus Costa Rica at lower.com field in Columbus, Canada v Panama at BMO Field, Honduras v Jamaica at Estadio Olímpico, and then El Salvador versus Mexico at the Estadio Casputalán.
I think for me, this is an intriguing matchup. I think, obviously you would look at USA, Costa Rica, because those are 2 of the 3 traditional powers in CONCACAF. But again, I think I look at Canada versus Panama because, again, Canada is 3 points that you would think that if they're the 3rd best team in CONCACAF that they should win. But Panama is probably going to throw all their nuts and bolts at this game to see if they can pull off an upset on the road. Because if they do, like you mentioned, they're still right in the thick of things in qualification. So I'm looking at that match as a very intriguing one.
Something we referenced earlier, and I think that Canada-Panama game is one of them. and the U.S. Costa Rica game is the other. These squads who are not necessarily deep, that third match of the window, they could be in rough shape, whether that be age catching up to you, not being able to run out your best 11 for all 3 games, yellow card accumulation, which is going to be a thing by the time we get to the end of this window. Like Canada and the United States more so than Canada, but Canada has a deep squad. They'll be able to run. I don't know if Panama and Costa Rica will be able to keep up. You almost saw that last window, especially the U.S. game in Honduras, where the second half, the wheels kind of fell off for Honduras. You wonder if you're going to see that from teams like Costa Rica and Panama moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing I want to keep an eye on is that Honduras Jamaica game. Is where's Jamaica at? If they've picked up, say they've picked up a draw against the U.S., a draw against Canada, they're going to come into that Honduras game knowing that if they can get a win in Honduras, they come out of this window looking
Alive.
really good. I mean, it's a real shame. I feel like they could really do with a home game in this window against a better team. I mean, a lesser team, because when your only home game is against Canada, it makes it really tough, because I know we talk about this a lot, is, draw on the road, win your home games, and that's a pathway to getting into the World Cup. But I think that they're going to have to go out for that, actually probably regardless, against Honduras.
Yeah. I also wonder if any of the books have odds on how many minutes into the game the fireworks will be going off at Cuscatlan for that El Salvador-Mexico game.
20 minutes.
They saw it work against the U.S. Might as well just keep it rolling,
I just want to know, what's the odds on, how many ladders we see?
Oh, my God. Just the magic of World Cup qualifying. It's so good to have it back. Now, we wanted to do this podcast. We definitely had to get an episode out before this round of qualifiers, because this is what we do. This is the meat of why we have this podcast, is the international windows. We're not doing a typical one, but we do want to give you some interaction here. So we put out the call on social media for postcards to the pod. So we got some good response. So we're going to talk about some of the questions you guys submitted. All right.
I do want to preface something. With, we got some really good questions that required a lot of thought. So I think there's going to be some questions that we took this episode that we're going to have to come back to, because I know none of us had the time to prep for this. But there was.
What you're saying is we didn't want to think.
Yeah,
we didn't want to think tonight.
Yeah, I think it's been a long day for us all.
Yeah, it's been a long week. I still got to figure out a bunch of stuff for trips next week. We're punting those until we can put some thought into some of these really good questions. Not saying that the rest of these aren't good too, but we'll get through this.
The other ones required research.
Yeah, I don't want to research. I just want to talk, banter, such things. All right, first up, we're going to Elliot Barr, who is at Yogi McLovin on Twitter. That was a good question. How many points do Jamaica need to stay safe in qualifying? And if they don't do it this round, who should we bring in to coach the team? Donald, you want to lead off on this one?
Yeah. So here's the interesting thing, and thanks to my boy E for the question. Jamaica is in trouble, because if they don't get 6 points, they might be in a predicament where they're not really into it. And it all depends on what, where those 6 come from, right? Like if they lose to the United States, then possibly, or they lose to Canada, then possibly. But 5 is okay. 6 or 7 is probably where they need to be. I don't think they're going to get 9. I think that's a tall order. But the fact is they only have 1 point. Third place right now has 5 points, and they need to be able to get more than them. But the good thing for them is they face 2 of those teams in Canada and the United States. So they have a chance to directly affect their jump in the standings.
Yeah, I think 6 is the number. And I think that we've talked a lot I keep going back to this. This is a really good Jamaica team. However, some of their best players, like Mikel Antonio, they may have just gotten him into the Jamaica setup, but this is probably his only chance to qualify for the World Cup at 31 years old. So I think that, yeah, they got to get 6 points, or a lot of these guys that they've spent time recruiting, it's going to be for naught.
Now, stay safe in qualifying. I think they might be out of it, but as far as like the coaching thing, I don't know if the coach is the issue here. I think they are a victim of the circumstances. They're a victim of COVID. They're a victim of the red list. And as we'll see as the rest of this final round goes, like they have 11 more matches to play. You might see something hopeful moving forward. I think they're just so far behind the 8 ball. I don't know if there's anything they can do outside of grabbing 6 or 7 points this window and all of a sudden being in the mix. Like, you still got to play everybody.
Free. I'm free. Like, I can coach.
Listen, I don't need to coach. You could just send me some of like the training gear and like some apparel so it looks like I coach.
Look, I would say this. I don't plan on going back into an office soon, but I will definitely go to the office. I will definitely do that. So the pod is ready. The pod volunteers as tribute. We got to relax the COVID things though. I mean, obviously be safe, but this whole not leaving your hotel thing, we have to leave to train. So we're just gonna make that happen.
Yeah. At JFF, we got volunteers. So thanks, Elliot, for the question. Next up, we've got a question from Donald Hall. Why do the U.S.
Great name, by the way. Great name.
Donald, yeah. Donald agrees. Why do the U.S. have players that can play well in a top 5 league but struggle when they play for the U.S. men's national team? Jonathan, you want to lead off here?
Yeah, I Donald's exact words were, but suck when they play for the U.S. men's national team. But
don't clean that up. Like, not like this is this isn't the clean version of the podcast. We're not bleeping. This isn't the radio edit.
No, I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that like we have I think travel is a big thing. I mean, you have guys coming over from Europe. I mean, that travel over just to the United States is pretty arduous. And then you throw in the fact that then there's a lot of travel in between windows. But I think it's a different style of soccer in CONCACAF and qualifying. It's a lot more compact. There's not as much of an opportunity to play a little more of that free flowing style. And I just think it's just a little more difficult and a little more physical. And I don't think it's any knock. I think we see that with a lot of players when they come into a national team setup. They struggle because they're not used to the system. They only see these guys several weeks out of the year, and they just don't get a chance to get in the rhythm.
The simple answer is this: because CONCACAF is the greatest confederation in the world. That's the simple answer. The slightly longer answer is, in addition to what Jonathan said, Tyler Adams talked about it too, where he talked about before the last window, some of these places don't have the most pristine conditions that these guys are used to in Europe. I mean, Europe, if the grass is not like, 1/8 inch tall, like people riot and they burn the grass down and they ban you from the stadium until they have to put the grass in that's up to the standards of European football. But that's not necessarily the case here. We have tall grass, we have short grass, we have other, gamesmanship tactics that are done with the facilities. They're in older stadiums that are less kept, and they feel the passion in the locker room. Like they don't, in some of these modern stadiums in Europe, they don't have to hear it from the fans until they get out onto the field. But I mean, you'll have lampposts shaking from the roof above them and feel like their whole locker room is going to collapse because everyone's jumping up in the stadium. So those are sort of things that you read about and you see it, but you can't actually feel it until you're there. And I think that's kind of why, because remember, a lot of these young guys, it's their first time experiencing it. So they're going to have some of these struggles.
Yeah. See, now, personally, I think the question is a little disingenuous because just throwing out the term top 5 league is garbage. There are 5 true top leagues in this world. They are CONCACAF Nations League, CONCACAF Champions League, CONCACAF League, the Leagues Cup, and the Cayman Islands Premier League. Those are your top 5 leagues. So when you're talking about the U.S. players not playing very well in your English Premier League or your Bundesliga, let's talk about real quality soccer instead of that garbage. But thank you, Donald, for the question. Next up, we've got a question from Grant Sudberg, who goes by @Goatfoot21. This one came in through Twitter. Is Greg Berhalter being suppressed by the U.S. soccer mafia? Some questionable forward options. Donald, is the U.S. soccer mafia suppressing Greg Berhalter?
No, because here's the question for you. What was questionable about these options? I mean, Jesse Zardes was hurt last camp, but he's been scoring goals. He's in. We don't have Jordan Pefok. No, we don't have Josh Sargent. As Jonathan and I said, Pefok was probably the one guy that I would have brought into this camp because he has been playing well. But I mean, you have Matthew Hoppe, you have Ricardo Pepi. Like Pepi was the savior of the game.
What's questionable about leaving off Josh Sargent? Like, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but like, what's he done for both at a club level and for the national team in the past 6 months? Absolutely nothing. Like, that's not a snub. Like, that Josh Sargent missing out is not a snub. Daryl Dike's been injured. Now we saw him last night. He got a goal, from the penalty spot, and he seems to be getting back to full health. But like, even then, he needs time to get healthy.
And I will ride for my man, Paul Arriola. There are so many people who dog him and say that he has no business being on the national team. That man is on fire right now. He scored 3 goals and had 2 dimes in the last 4 games. And also on top of that, he is let me check that. He is the second leading scorer of everyone on this roster and the 3rd leading active guy in goals scored. So everyone says, oh, he has a problem not scoring. It might be that everyone else has a problem not scoring, not him, because only persons that are active in the player pool, and I say active in the last 2 years, that have scored more goals than him are Gyasi Zardes and Christian Pulisic.
But like, also, who else are you going to call in? Josie's out. You're going to call in Wando? You're going to bring back Aaron Johansson? Like, there's only so many guys who are like reasonable to like Rubio Rubin. Are you
Alan
getting him
Gordon,
back in?
You cowards.
What's that?
The call of Alan Gordon, you cowards.
Is he still playing?
I don't
think it matters if he's still playing. He'll still go get you a goal in the 88th minute.
And I will say, I'm not the biggest Areola fan, but that man is made for Panama away.
Yeah, I mean, there's only a handful of guys you can consider snubs. It's not like it's a very deep spot in the pool right now. Honestly, CJ Sapong might be worthy of getting some run.
I mean, it's not out of the question. I mean, the man's put up some goals, and if we're talking about American forwards who've scored, it's Gyasi Zardes and CJ Sapong.
And this is why I look at things in windows, right? Like, people were freaking out yesterday over rosters. And what if this roster goes off and scores 8 goals in 3 games? Everyone's going to say, oh, there's still going to be people who say, oh, well, they didn't call the right guys. They didn't call up my man over here. They didn't call in this guy to be, 3rd string, out to the side. Right. But these guys can come in and score a bunch of goals. That's what they're here for. So let's see if they can do that before we start complaining that we brought up the wrong guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Grant, for the question. Next, we're going to move to a question. Our good friend of the program, Ryan McCauley, had some excellent questions for us, so we're going to try to knock out 2 of them. Shout out to my man Ronnie and Suriname with this. Which government official would be most fun to see randomly insert themselves into a CCL match? I should clarify, CCL is a higher level. I feel like CONCACAF League is where you really get the value of having a government official decide, you know what, I'm just going to start up top in this continental competition. Donald, who you want to see?
This is a great question, by the way, because this is one that requires a little bit of thinking, but I don't know names, right? But it's got to be from a Caribbean country. It's got to be someone who is the assistant minister of health or something, someone who has no business being on the soccer field. Also someone who's probably advanced, right? Like in America, like, Dr. Fauci's 80 and he's leading, all the immunology type of stuff, right? It's got to be someone who's an administrator of health who's probably like close to 80 and is also like, yeah, I've never played soccer. I'd love to try it once. And just, the president of the country of the club goes, well, we have this Champions League game. Why don't you just play in that? We'll just throw you in at right back and see how you do. Like, that's who it's got to be. It can't be like vice president is cool, but we got to go obscure. It's got to be, someone that you like, who is this person and why is this person on a roster? And then you say, oh, come to find out his day job is working for the government.
You mean like, so maybe someone like Jack Warner?
No, he sucks. Jack Warner sucks.
Fuck that guy. He's out.
No, I mean, I was just going to say like, maybe like Bernie Sanders on the left wing.
Would he play too far to the left for some people, or
I mean, there would be a lot of people saying that he was hugging the touchline and he was way too out far on the left.
Yeah,
some people.
There were a variety of ways. I feel like Donald's got the right thing. You need like the I don't want to say like a Department of State type position. I want like the travel ministry, like whoever leads travel, just like going out there on the field and just talking about to all the players like, yo, you should really come out here on vacation. We got some great beaches.
Like, okay, so the Caribbean equivalent of the Postmaster General, that's who needs to be at there. That like someone who you're like, yo, what does this person do? He doesn't work for the post office. He's not a general, but he has those titles. And oh yeah, he plays soccer.
Yeah, I think it's got to be at a minnow, like it's got to be a minnow level
shadow
country.
Undersecretary or someone a part of the shadow cabinet, like that's the like the shadow department of Sportminster or something like that.
Well, you need to be at one of the smaller countries where it's like all of these players have like regular day jobs. Like, oh, that guy's a plumber. That dude runs a restaurant. He's a cook. This guy is the president of the country.
Right.
That kind of thing. Great question, Ryan. Really the kind of thing that we thrive with here. Ryan also had another question for us. What is your dream Ocho, balancing both the quality of play and the quality of travel experience? I think I want to have Donald lead off on this because I think he's traveled the most out of all of us.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because you could balance the quality of travel, but adding the quality of play is actually a really interesting dynamic. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to do all 8, but I'm going to start with 4. Okay.
It's we can kind of go around and each like add in a country.
Why don't we just do one each, right? We'll just kind of go around a horn until we pick 8. So I'll start with the obvious.
Well, we should pick 7. Like the U.S. has to be in it because travel experience is so much easier when you're not leaving the country. So
that's true.
I will say there's a few countries that I have jotted down and thought of that I want to specify the city in which the games take place as well.
Okay.
Nice.
Okay.
All right. So, Don, lead us off with your first country.
We got to go to Arnos Val Stadium.
Yes.
St. Vincent.
Let's
and
go.
The Grenadines. We've seen. I mean, look, they were very close to making the second round. They were threatening, and it's one of the greatest places on earth.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Shout out Vincey Heat. For me, since Donald literally took the country I was going to use, leading into the quality of travel experience, I think we got to get Canada in there. Canada's a beautiful, wonderful country. Very easy to get to. I've never had a bad time in Toronto.
See, you
drag me out to Vancouver, I twist my arm.
This was the one that I was specifically thinking of when I was wanting to specify cities. And I was wanting to specify Vancouver because it is a gorgeous city with amazing food and the opportunity to not only go to games, but maybe catch a little bit of skiing. There's just, I mean, you could make it I imagine like a game, like a U.S. game in the north, like a home qualifier in the Northwest. You then take the train up to Vancouver, and you just make a whole week out of it. And I think that is that really balances that out.
Yeah, so you get
Done. Sold.
Vancouver with your nice city and your skiing. You have all that stuff. I mean Montreal. You have Montreal in your nightlife. Toronto. You've got Toronto.
Shout
like,
out Winnipeg.
No.
Windsor, bro. Windsor.
Yeah.
Jets.
Yeah, I'm down with Windsor.
Gang.
You mix some Niagara Falls in there, whatever. Shout out Sundowner.
Buffalo.
Buffalo is not in Canada. That does not count. All right. Did you have a country, Jonathan?
I was gonna go. I was trying to decide between a few different, but I think I'm gonna go Montserrat.
Ooh, yes.
That is a balance. I think Eric, you came in with the competition, but Montserrat, not only for the experience of going there, they got dope jerseys. Shout out Bolo, send us stuff.
Yeah. Bowl football.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I'm going Montserrat on that.
Which is great, which leads into my next team that I was going to say, the next country, Antigua and Barbuda. Why? Because to get to Montserrat, you have to go to Antigua and to do the puddle jump. And also because they have dope jerseys. Also because it's a beautiful island, 1A in terms of islands in the Caribbean, and just make it happen. And I would also be in this scenario. I would also be president of CONCACAF, where I would make sure that the United States has 2 away trips, 2 away matches in the same window. First Antigua, then Montserrat.
Okay. All right. It seems like it's falling on me to consider the quality of play and quality. I know there's quality of travel experience, and we got to balance that with quality of play. So I'm going to continue to disregard the quality of play, and I'm going Cayman Islands.
Yes.
Truman Baden will be there. You don't got to twist my arm to get back down to the Caymans. Great. Just wonderful. Absolutely delightful. So throw the Caymans in there. Jonathan?
So I'm going to go with a little quality of play, and I got to put Mexico in there because Mexico City is, I know, Eric, you haven't done Mexico City yet. I mean, but it is an amazing city. The food, the culture, the museums, everything about that city, just how big it is and how vibrant of a city. I mean, and I would maybe even throw, if we could work in both Mexico City and Monterrey, a little bit of double in there for both of the cities. But I just think you got to throw Mexico in there.
Okay.
And I think if we're
wrap it up.
All right, so this is the pick that I really will say combines quality of play with quality of travel. Eric just mentioned how cool the trip is, and I completely agree with it. And also will be able to tell you when we get to do this country in the laser focus, one of the wildest stories you will ever hear anyone tell you about something that happened in a foreign country. I'm talking about Panama City to be exact. It combines Miami with Central American flair and adds both on steroids. It's incredible. It's a dope place to visit, and also their team is pretty good. So I think that is the one team that really, other than Mexico, kind of combines the quality of play and the quality of travel, and both are very, very top notch.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree there.
My only one that I felt got a snub was Jamaica. Jamaica was one because I feel it balances that quality of play versus the travel experience as well.
But
absolutely,
I mean, Panama City, unassailable. Really excited to go there next week. I know Donald and I are going to be more than happy to talk about our entire experience in the episode we do whenever we get back from traveling. All right. Great questions from Ryan. He also submitted some more that we're going to save for a future episode, so really appreciate that. Last question from Ron Dole at Ron Dole 12. Power rank the domestic beers from each of the Caribbean, Central American countries. Is that there's so many. I mean, that's like asking a parent to pick their favorite child. Like, of course you have one, but you don't want to offend the other ones by saying.
Yeah, this is difficult only because there's the thing about Caribbean beers and Central American beers is everyone's thinking like, don't think in American terms, don't think in German terms either. Think just great light beers that are meant to quench your thirst on a stupidly hot day. That's what all of these beers are. Very few of them are dark. Very few of them have hops. They are just like the hops that you would see like an IPA or something like that, or a pale ale. These are strictly just like, yo, I'm on a beach. Think Corona or less as far as like type of beers that we're talking about. Very, very light. And you can have 9 million of them and not get hammered in a day.
Yeah. Like they're beers that you're like, what would I want to drink 8 of right now?
Right.
You know?
In one sitting and
Yeah.
still have the opportunity to like, watch a soccer game.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to rank them because there are so many Caribbean nations, and I have only had so many of the. So I'm gonna start with Caribbean nations, and I'm gonna give a top 4.
Well, let's just shout out our favorites, just to
So-
get like, we don't have to do like the 1 to 10. We
Yeah.
can just get like give the votes out.
something in Carib from Trinidad and Tobago.
Carib. Yep.
Skull from St. Kitts. I'm looking at Stag, also from St. Kitts. Red Stripe. I mean, that is always
Hooray
been,
beer.
Hooray beer. I mean, it has always been one of my absolute, hot days out in the sun. Having a couple bottles of Red Stripe is always a good thing.
I think for me, I'm taking out all, Mexico, United States, Canada, taking those out of the equation. Talk about Central America here.
Shout out
North
Molson
America.
Canadian.
I was about to
Shout
say
out
that's Eric's
Molson.
number 1.
Yeah. So
Bay.
I think 4 that I really, really enjoyed, Imperial, which you'll find in Costa Rica. You also find it in El Salvador and Honduras. I really enjoyed Carib. I think Carib is probably the pound for pound best beer in the Caribbean. Wadadli, which you will find in Antigua and Barbuda, and Hyrum, which we drink billions of. in
Buckets.
St. Vincent.
Buckets of them. Literally buckets of them.
Literal buckets.
Yeah. I was going to shout out, thank you for bringing it up, Hyroon, St. Vincent, bless up there. Also want to shout out K-Brew, Cayman Islands, also a favorite. What were we drinking in El Salvador? I can't think of the
El
name.
Salvador, we were drinking, it wasn't Salvavida, because that was Honduras.
Yeah.
El Salvador, oh, now that's going to bug me because we drank a bunch. We drank the bar out of them. I remember that.
Yeah. No, we drank, it was a Salvavida that we drank out of the hotel bar.
Pilsner. We were drinking Pilsner.
Yes, Pilsner. Shout out to Pilsner. El Salvador. I had buckets of those. Not literal buckets, but like figurative buckets of them.
Mhm.
Pilsner was fantastic.
I will shout out this one. This is probably the most interesting beer in the Caribbean. It's Red Stripe Bold. I have not seen it in Jamaica that often, but I have seen in Jamaica where I did have literal buckets of is in Antigua. Red Stripe Bold, think Red Stripe. It tastes exactly like a normal Red Stripe would be, except it's 7.5%. So it has a lot of body on it. It doesn't taste like that though. But lo and behold, if you drink a bucket of them, you will be remembering things a lot differently the rest of the day. So shout out to Red Stripe Bold.
Okay. So in conclusion, our power rankings: number 1, Hyroon, tied for second. Everything else we talked about.
Sample the local beers, sample the local rums,
Yeah.
wherever you go in these places, because you will find some really amazing stuff. And if there's a Cerveceria Chapultepec in your
God.
neck of the woods, wherever you
Bless
go,
up.
just do it because
Yeah.
everything's $1.30.
You can sample a lot. I mean, that's the wonderful thing about traveling and experiencing these cultures, is getting to drink all of their delicious beers and noting the differences and having those beers connect to the wonderful experiences you're having and enhancing the wonderful experiences you're having with whoever you happen to be with at any given moment. So thank you, Ron, for the question. Always happy to talk beers around CONCACAF on this podcast. So that about wraps us up with what we wanted to cover on this episode. Jonathan, you want to tell everyone where you can find
Yeah,
where
you
they
can
can
find
you?
At BroadwaySportsMedia.com and then at Speedway Soccer. It was Speedway Sock on Twitter. And then you can find my personal stuff at JSlapeSSB.
Donald?
You can find me at BlazingDW on Instagram and Twitter. And I also write and do a podcast for Stars and Stripes FC. I do want to make a quick melancholy note on the last podcast that I did on Stars and Stripes FC. I pay tribute to a very close friend of ours, Martin Hushka, who sadly passed away last week, has been just one of the strongest kids I've ever met. So please dip to the end of that episode to kind of learn more about Martin, his struggles, and how you can be a part of his continued inspiration that he has in all of us. So rest in peace to Martin, and much love to our dear friends, Robert and Amy, on their loss.
Yeah, we want to send our deepest love to the Hushka family right now. Again, as you should know by now, you can find us at POSTCARDS on Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagrams. Make sure you give us a follow, give us some feedback. When we ask for listener questions because we don't have enough content on our own, please engage with us. We love the interaction. We love the fact that you guys listen. Each episode seems to be bigger than the last as far as listeners, so it's great to see this keeps building. And just most importantly, enjoy the CONCACAF. I know CONCACAF was on a global soccer stage recently, thanks to our boys, our man Ronnie in Suriname, brought some attention to how wonderful our region can be. Just enjoy it. Got World Cup qualifiers coming up. It doesn't get any better than this, folks. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.